Vaishali Vasavda. So the biggest unmet need across is basically acting as a consultant ophthalmologist at Raghudev Eye Hospital, Jaipur as well as Ahmedabad. Her area of expertise is in the management of complex cases of adult and the pediatric cataracts. She specializes in modern cataract management, including advanced technology of IOL option and the latest in surgical techniques. She has a special interest in basic and clinical research related to cataracts. She has more than 20 peer-reviewed publications in national as well as international journal. She has more than 5 book chapters to her credit. She is also the reviewer for peer-reviewed journals such as Cataract and Refractive Surgery and Eye Journal. Over to you, Dr. Vaishali.
Thank you so much, Dr. Utkarsh. And let me switch on to my topic. Now, I do admit at the beginning that it sounds a little boring, but rest assured, we will make it very practical and user-friendly. So the idea is that we are talking a lot about so many antibiotics. We started off using ofloxacin and gatifloxacin, tobramycin. Now we have becifloxacin and moxifloxacin and levofloxacin, and everything is so easily accessible, not generic, branded, whatever you say. So there is a lot of use, whether some of it overuse and misuse of antibiotics. So we need to sort of step back and understand what is it that we are doing and the effect of antibiotic resistance. Now, ophthalmology, we all know that topical, intracameral, intravitreal, as well as systemic antibiotics are used depending on the indication. So therefore, we need to be very, very careful now in injudiciously using antibiotics. We know from our physician colleagues that even the highest of antibiotics have started becoming resistant, particularly in hospital settings, and therefore we need to be both careful and yet do the best for our patients. The prime indication for antibiotic use today is infections, particularly corneal infections. And unfortunately, all parts of India, we are blessed with these all bacterial, fungal, viral, all kinds of corneal infections. But we do need to understand where antibiotics stand and what is their role. The primary reason why we like to use is these kind of bacterial ulcers, abscesses, endophthalmitis, which are very prevalent even without any trauma or surgery sometimes in our conditions. And these can be potentially blinding. So yes, these are the prime indication for using an antibiotic, for using a higher generation antibiotic, and using it very judiciously, sometimes for long periods of time. What is important for us to understand as clinicians is that in all these kind of blepharitis, conjunctivitis, keratitis, endophthalmitis, most common organisms involved are the Staphylococcus aureus, and which we all know is becoming resistant to many, many drugs, including the methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, Staphylococci, coagulase negative, pneumococci, and Pseudomonas. Not that others are not involved, but these are the classical organisms nationally and internationally, and they continue to remain so. Now, Indian data in the past, it was being said that most of our post-surgical or post-trauma infections are always gram negative, unlike the Western world where Staphylococcus still remains a predominant organism. But there have been recent studies, including one from a very prestigious institute in India, which have shown that even today, gram-positive organisms, mainly the Staphylococci of all varieties, are still the majority. Pseudomonas and fungal infections are common, but they are less than 40% of the total infection load, particularly endophthalmitis. So we need an antibiotic even today that is an excellent efficacy on gram-positive as well as a good coverage for gram-negative. That, I think, is something we need to understand. Now, this may remind us of our MBBS days, but just to sort of recap, each antibiotic acts differently. There are bacteriostatic antibiotics and there are bactericidal antibiotics. And bactericidal are obviously preferred. And like Dr. Shreyas had referred to in his first talk, mechanisms that inhibit DNA gyrase as well as topoisomerase or a combination would be better, because getting resistant organisms to these is more difficult. And when we choose an antibiotic, it's not just which is the brand or who is giving us a good deal. What we do need to understand is scientifically which one has the minimum inhibitory concentration which is favorable to us, and yet it has a good killing effect on the organism. And in this table, if you can see, it may look very crowded, but what I do want to show is that all the fluoroquinolones, The modern fourth generation fluoroquinolones, Levo, Gatti, moxifloxacin, they have very low minimum inhibitory concentration. That means a very small amount of the drug is required to kill 90% of the organisms in that tissue, which is much higher with ciprofloxacin and ofloxacin. As you can see, a 0.75 versus only 0.09 for moxifloxacin. And this remains for majority of the common organisms, staphylococci, pneumococci, gram-negative organisms. Also, what is very important that the moxifloxacin, for example, if you see, susceptibility is almost 100% across the spectrum of organisms and with such a low MIC or minimum inhibitory concentration. So using these makes sense for us, but only when needed. We all understand now, I think nobody is using ofloxacin and ciprofloxacin as a routine, except for the problem with our country also is that pharmacies and chemists over the counter, anybody goes with a red eye or an itchy eye and they will get a ciprofloxacin bottle just for nothing. So we don't need to understand and educate our patients also. When they come with a bottle of a ciprofloxacin eye drop, you need to tell them that not only that you should stop using it, explain to them why it was not the right drug for them and why they should avoid doing these kind of over-the-counter practices. But basically what this slide again shows is that moxifloxacin among all the newer fluoroquinolones has a very, very high potency and is, even more in many organisms than gatifloxacin and levofloxacin. So Staph aureus, which are resistant to methicillin, coagulase negative staphylococci, gram-negative organisms also, moxifloxacin, levofloxacin, gatifloxacin are very effective. So moxifloxacin for me has become my choice of antibiotic, particularly for all my post-ops, be it corneal surgery or cataract surgery or even pediatric cataract surgery, because preservative-free moxifloxacin Vigamox has also been approved for use in infants. So for me, this is a go-to antibiotic for all my post-operative patients. Again, mark my words, only post-operative patients. Like we need to discuss, we need a broad spectrum antibiotic because everything is not going to be a gram-positive. With the newer fluoroquinolones, let's look across ciprofloxacin to Levo, Besi, Gatti, and moxifloxacin. Moxi has a huge coverage of both gram-positive and gram-negative. Now, Besi and gatifloxacin both do not have a good gram-negative coverage. Levofloxacin, yes, it does have some coverage, but overall broad spectrum effect is, even when you look at positive and negative combined together, moxifloxacin scores over newer fluoroquinolones. And if we again look, these are all different kinds of studies. This is more technical, but the gist of this is that when you look at the in vitro susceptibility of conjunctivitis also, because not every conjunctivitis is viral or allergic. For bacterial conjunctivitis, again, moxifloxacin and gatifloxacin, both are excellent. So I'm not trying to say that moxifloxacin is the only potent and effective drug. Yes, gatifloxacin works wonderfully for conjunctivitis, but if I'm looking for a one-stop solution, conjunctivitis, keratitis, endophthalmitis, post-operative prophylaxis, for me, a preservative-free moxifloxacin fits the bill in every aspect. Now, if you see here in this slide, again, these figures, we don't need to go into the technicalities. The gist is that both Besi and moxifloxacin had identical minimum inhibitory concentrations for killing 90% of the organisms, whereas for ciprofloxacin, it was much higher. So point is, aminoglycoside, ciprofloxacin, ofloxacin, all these need to be phased out, particularly for over-the-counter use, and this can only come through educating patients. So what we can do is only educating patients, because the other things are not in our hands as practitioners. Yes, the industry should be driving a lot of awareness for over-the-counter antibiotics, particularly I find it very common, any aminoglycoside like tobramycin or ciprofloxacin is just handed over like peanuts to patients. And these are promoting resistance and obviously not helping the patient's disease. When you choose an antibiotic, how does it penetrate? Looking at this graph here, moxifloxacin, which is the one in the gray, the largest bar, has the highest corneal concentration. So like I said, it is excellent even for keratitis. So even for stromal abscesses, for obviously for ulcers, I would start with moxifloxacin as a broad spectrum antibiotic. Then obviously based on isolates and cultures, you might have to change the treatment. Now, when you look at penetration in the conjunctiva, again here if you see this bar, which is moxifloxacin, it is much higher than all other fluoroquinolones. Even in the aqueous humor, moxifloxacin has excellent penetration. The next would be gatifloxacin, but it is less, and we do not have any commercially available preparation that will allow us to do an intracameral injection in either a routine prophylaxis of endophthalmitis. For me and for all surgeons at our centers, it is a practice to, for many years, for more than 10 years now, we have been using 0.1 ml of intracameral preservative-free Vigamox eye drops, a separate bottle for each patient, just load it in a tuberculin syringe and inject 0.1 ml. One bottle for one patient is our mantra. We do not fill up 4 syringes and put them in a drum and then we use. That is something I think kills the purpose of doing an intracameral antibiotic by adding that much more value of contamination. Now, antibiotic resistance, why should we be discussing it? And Dr. Shreyas also beautifully brought this out because of two things. One, organisms are mutating, and COVID has shown us the classical example. So organisms are mutating and becoming resistant to even the highest of highest antibiotics. Also, the injudicious use of antibiotics in our country at least is becoming a problem amongst GPs, amongst physicians. They will just give antibiotic chemists, as we discussed further. So we need to understand that a lot of organisms are now resistant to multiple drugs, including newer generation fluoroquinolones. But ofloxacin, tobramycin, and chloramphenicol, these three were found to be extremely resistant to most organisms. So I think in a routine practice, these should be used only very selectively or when the cultures show a sensitivity to these organisms. And even the methicillin resistant Staph aureus, which is probably the most notorious and the most concerning organism for us as cataract surgeons, as refractive surgeons, as practicing OPD clinicians, we are seeing that for 46% resistance of MRSA, even against moxifloxacin, much more, 60 and 70, almost 70% resistance to gatifloxacin and levofloxacin. So it's not like moxifloxacin is a wonder drug and it can never become resistant. But again, like Dr. Shreyas highlighted, the newer fluoroquinolones, there will have to be 2 mutations in the topoisomerase and the DNA gyrase for it to be, for an organism to be resistant. So this is much less likely to be resistant compared to other fluoroquinolones, the older ones, as well as other groups of drugs. Now, like we discussed, that moxifloxacin and maybe levofloxacin also to some extent, resistance is much less today, which does not mean they will not become resistant. And Gati and Moxi appear to be the best choice for a broad spectrum coverage, which we all do in our practice and we understand that. Also, when I choose an antibiotic, we were discussing the concept of combinations, steroid antibiotic combinations. I feel that when you give suppose you give a dexamethasone Vigamox combination and you give it 3 times a day for 2 weeks, the advantage is that because a patient will be using only 1 bottle and they will probably use it 3 times, the incidence of resistance will also reduce because you are controlling the duration and you are at least trying to improve the compliance frequency. Now, if I were to give a moxifloxacin 3 times a day, a steroid 4 times a day, and an NSAID and a lubricant and probably a cycloplegic, maybe the patient will drop the frequency of these drops from 3 times a day. They might use it only once or twice. Inadequate dosage also is a very important factor in promoting antibiotic resistance. And we know that there are several mechanisms which could be at the level of the organism and at the level of the drug. So genetic, like mutational resistance is very common, but also modification of the antibiotic molecule, decreased penetration, change in the organism target site. These are common mechanisms. And I'm very strong in my opinion that proper dosage and proper frequency is very important, because if you either use it for too less or too much and for a too long time, that is something that is going to promote resistance at a community level. Now, when you use any drug, let's say you have moxifloxacin 5 brands to choose from, how do you choose? When we talk of antibiotic resistance, the pH, the amount of the active drug, how soluble it is, how much is actually penetrating, and how stable the solution is, all these will play a very important role. It's not just the drug. So all the paraphernalia, which have to be very tightly controlled in terms of their quality, will also affect antibiotic resistance. And obviously, the prime factor is misuse, not only in humans, but also in animals, because now we see so much of dairy, poultry, cultivation, all forms of animal and farming and husbandry, which is also contributing to systemic antibiotic resistance. No need to say that red eye and antibiotic of higher. We don't even start with a lower antibiotic. We straight away give moxifloxacin, gatifloxacin, levofloxacin. And particularly in this COVID time, the last 16, 18 months, with a lot of teleconsults happening, nobody wants to risk it, obviously. So there has been a lot of overuse of WhatsApp or teleconsults, and obviously over-the-counter higher antibiotics, which is something which we should strongly be looking at and avoiding. Appropriate drug in every way, and therefore, in my opinion, branded versus generic. Now, I'll just take a few seconds to talk about branded and generic. In the Western world, generic and branded are very distinctly defined, but in India, major generic is again subdivided into branded generic and true generic, and we really don't have too many true generic drugs. It is either the innovator brand or it is a branded generic, which means that it is using the same formulation or the same constitution as the patented drug once the patent wears off, and then it is being produced by brands. So there is a difference between true generic and branded generic and the innovator drug. Innovator drug is the original molecule which was introduced in terms not only the molecule but the vehicle and all its components that go together. Why do I think that it is important to use innovator drugs? Because generics, at least in India, I'm not confident in using generics or even branded generics. You never know things like the pH, things like its storage, its stability. So these are question marks which can, especially if I'm using it intracamerally, intravitreally, or for my post-op patients, I would rather have the patient spend that 300 or 350 rupees, but sleep peacefully for myself and for the patient. And this is a study that came out which said that 20% of generic ciprofloxacin purchased without prescription, which is very common in India, were underpotent. So this is just for ciprofloxacin. Imagine what it would do for higher antibiotics, and therefore just propagate resistance like crazy. And so take care. And like I said, if you or me were to buy a phone, we would rather wait 6 months or a year or a laptop and wait for a good deal on the branded one, rather than just hurrying up and buying something because there is a deal. So same way for your patient's eyes, use antibiotics only when needed. But when you do use them, use the right antibiotic is my philosophy. I do not use antibiotics as a routine in any red eye, unless it is a very classical case of bacterial conjunctivitis. And in my experience, in most urban practices, bacterial conjunctivitis is becoming less and less, and it is mostly viral or allergic conjunctivitis. So please refrain from using antibiotics for any red eye, and particularly now, like I said, in these lockdowns and restricted mobility, it's very tempting to be safe and prescribe Vigamox or Gatiflox or Levoflox, but that is not something which we should be doing. Now, like this is somewhat similar to what Dr. Shreyas was referring to, that there are drugs which can, when you use them in a concentration higher than the minimum inhibitory concentration, they can actually kill more organisms, and therefore the chances of resistance are much low. Similarly, there is a concept in pharmacology called mutant prevention concentration. I would say about, let's say, 8 to 10 times higher than the MIC, or the minimum inhibitory concentration that is needed to inhibit 90% organisms. If you use it at a 10 times higher concentration, you can even prevent mutation and therefore block the chances of antibiotic resistance. So this is the concept of MIC. If you use 4 times higher concentration, you use minimum bactericidal concentration. And if it is 8 to 10 times higher, it actually prevents mutations. So yes, use a drug which has a lower MIC and therefore in consequence, a lower mutant prevention concentration. So you can use more of that drug and prevent resistance also. I won't repeat these slides, but basically, when we look at drugs, yes, spectrum we looked at, potency we looked at, dosing frequency, yes, the vehicle, the transport branded versus generic, and how the judiciousness of use. Another big challenge is pharmacokinetics. That means how effectively is it reaching the tissues, particularly when we talk of corneal, intracameral, and intravitreal penetration. Now coming to the last topic, which is intracameral antibiotics, and Dr. Shreyas beautifully elucidated that, so I don't want to go into the details, but we have been using this, like I said, for over 10 years now, and more practitioners across the world are preferring intracameral antibiotics. In European countries, it is mainly cefuroxime, but in the US and in India, it is moxifloxacin, because it is available to us as a preservative-free, ready-to-use, non-dilution concentration. So I would prefer that over a pharmacy-diluted drug. So I think that is something we are using, and Dr. Haripriya and her colleagues have published the largest study of intracameral antibiotics, and which has come from the Arvind group, thousands of patients, where they have shown that intracameral moxifloxacin is effective and in prevention of not in treatment, but in prevention, and therefore should be considered for phaco and for SICS as a routine practice. So I think, I mean, yes, there can be debates, but if I were to err, I would definitely go for that. And the last point on, it is our duty, it is our role, before any babas or any kind of other people start pushing wrong things in people's minds, it is our duty to educate patients about the role of antibiotics and the role of antibiotic resistance, how big a threat it poses to them and their eyes and their health in the time to come. So I think with that, I would like to end my talk, and we'll be happy to take any questions or comments from any of the other panelists.